The TEFL Commute, Season 9, Episode 5, in which Shaun and I talk all about working in pairs. Hello, Shaun.
Hi, Lindsay. How you doing?
Fine, how are you?
I'm not too bad. What's new?
It's back again, just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
See what I did there?
Castles in the sky. I know, I like it, yeah.
I've been working a little bit on the old hammy humor for TEFL Commute.
Hey, that's my domain. You're the serious one. I'm the hammy humour guy. Hey, let's not get the roles confused. You're A, I'm B, yeah? And then we'll swap round.
Exactly. Oh, it started. Hey, by the way, everybody, if you're listening, welcome to the TEFL Commute. This is a podcast
He's going to do it.
for
Here
language
He's
teachers.
going to get it right.
But it's not necessarily about language teaching, although the topic will often come up. And today is a very language...
How are you going to talk about today's topic with the topic of teaching not coming up?
Oh, today is a very language teachy topic. After 9 seasons... We've done a lot of the obvious topics, so now we're getting more and more oblique, aren't we? Are we getting?
So what you're saying is we're running out of things to talk about?
Well, maybe not, but we're getting into deeper and deeper cuts, or is it just more and more obvious things that we haven't even ever thought of before?
Oh, I never realized you put that much thought into it. I thought it was a wild brainstorm. It's like, oh, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Yeah. Yes. Well, the topic of this wild brainstorm, what this wild brainstorm resulted in was today's topic, which was work in pairs, because we find that that's such a common thing that we do that we don't often talk about it that much. It's like just an understood bit of language teaching, right? Like pair work stuff. It's just the way it is, isn't it?
Right? Well, that's it. Yes, everything is done in pairs.
Yeah, it's all done in pairs. And I think one of the reasons we thought about this topic was because at TEFL, so the big language teachers conference that we go to every year, it happened to me again, by the way, Shaun, twice at TEFL, where I was in the audience and the workshop presenter said, okay, everybody, this next thing I want you to do with a partner. And you can almost hear a ripple of a groan. You know, there's like people sighing, someone leaning over. Sometimes, you know, like I've had all kinds of, someone saying, oh, another thing in pairs. The other one is someone, you know, turns away from me, almost like, I'm not going to work with you. I'm going to...
Well, I mean, that part was fairly understandable, but...
No, but they kind of look over their phone or whatever, you know, they're like, okay, I'm going to just turn off for this, but I'm not doing that.
Yeah, but I don't like pair work. Do you like pair work?
I do sometimes, but I think I have a reason for why this is happening at conferences. Because both of us have talked about this, haven't we? That we know.
Oh, it happens all the time when you're doing a conference talk or even a training session. I mean, in a training session to experienced teachers, I'll forgive those who are just beginning to be teachers. You know, that they're not sure about the pair work thing. But yeah, you stand up in a session full of experienced teachers and get into pairs, and as you say, everybody groans or they do it. I think we mentioned it before. Teachers are the worst people to do teacher-y things, though.
That's possibly true as well. But I have another reason that I think that this is happening, and one is, well, I mean, because I think it is a thing that happens, and I think it has to do with group dynamics, and especially at conferences, because at conferences, and something like TEFL is even the worst example of this, where the workshop lengths are maximum 40 minutes, but most of them are 30 minutes. And in a plenary, it's an hour. So this partly to do with the number of people in the room and the length of time. Obviously, in a plenary with 1,000 people in a room, I personally I don't like the idea of doing pair works, and I don't like the idea of trying to get people to do pair work, because there's no way I'm going to check back.
You know, I sat there listening to your ISFL thinking, I wish you'd put us into pairs.
Okay, moving on. The other reason, apart from groups being too big for pair work to kind of be effective, I think it's a group dynamics thing where the group hasn't really formed yet. So people don't really kind of know each other. They don't know the teacher that much. I kind of think of like beginning classes or early classes where a lot of the early stuff is sort of just establishing some routines, getting to know the teacher. The teacher tends to take on a more active role at the beginning of the class as people don't really know each other. I mean, sometimes with language classes also it might be different. You might want to set the stage straight away by saying, right, you're going to work in pairs because you speak more English if all of us are speaking in pairs at the same time here. So there's kind of a reason for that. Whereas in the workshop, there isn't that reason in the same way. And so I think
I see where you're coming from. It's interesting though, because I think you're right about the classroom dynamic. But I'd go further with that. Obviously, if students are in a class, they're used to doing it, which is what you're saying. In the conference, you're not used to the people you sat with, so you don't do it.
Yeah.
But you could begin a new academic year. Let's say in your language school, you could begin a new academic year, so it's a new class, but the students will still probably go into pairs better than teachers because it's in their kind of psyche to get into pairs more, I think.
And it's also the first activity you do to get people into pairs at the beginning of a new class makes sense in the sort of way like say some things about yourself and you're saying in a different language, so you're getting back into English, etc. Whereas you don't do those first kind of activities. We're doing a pair work activity that as teachers, we wouldn't be doing until like 3 or 4 classes or 3 or 4 sessions or units into a course, right? So a thing like turn to a partner and explain what, I mean, the worst of where they said, what you understand by the word differentiation, like one of those kind of word defining things where it's very kind of muddy and you're like, what am I going to say? What do you think it means? I don't know. What do you think it means? I think it means this. So, there's always a bit of like danger of face loss, losing face there. If the question is sort of quite open and woolly. Other times it might be a bit like, in the workshop when it doesn't work, like tell a partner about the last time this went really bad for you. And it's sort of like, I haven't had time to think. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. When was the last time that happened? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a time issue. I think there's also not knowing each other. So I think in a group of teachers, if in a workshop, if you said, okay, turn to a partner and say 3 things you want to get out of this conference and 3 things that you hope don't happen or whatever. And then there was going to be some kind of follow-up and whatever. It might, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't.
But I wonder if it's expectations. I'm just thinking, although that kind of falls down a little bit with training sessions outside of a conference. I think in a conference, I wonder if people are coming to listen, therefore, they've kind of come in with almost with an obstacle. Well. I'm signing up to go to this conference to listen to an expert tell me something. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I can see that. And if TEFL as an example, I mean, only some of the sessions are workshops. Most of the sessions are talks by definition. The difference in TEFL is the difference between 30 minutes and 45 minutes. If it's 45 minutes, it is supposed to be a workshop, whereas 30 minutes is a talk. And it is hard. I do think if you're investing 30 minutes of time into a talk, you expect there to be more of a talk than pair work. But that doesn't get outside of let's say, when you as a guest, you're doing a guest workshop somewhere, you turn up and talk to teachers, and I think I wonder if that still applies, whether they go, it's Lindsay or this is that. But I do wonder if I am going to loop back to what you're saying in the sense that as students, I think we have made it clear at some point the purpose of pair work in the sense, like obviously most naturally to raise the opportunity for them to speak, although it is, as you said, also a hidden way of having thinking time and all those kind of things. And I wonder in a teacher training session whether we don't make that so clear, whether the goals are as hidden. And sometimes we're doing it as part of loop input, aren't we? This is the way we're doing it because this is what we want you to do.
Now, I think in loop input it would work. So for example, I do think if you were giving a workshop, and I plan to do one next year on pair work, I can see getting them to do pair work activities might work better because it's sort of like it's like a loopy thing. It's like, okay, I can obviously I'm doing this because this is how we would do pair work with my students. It's sort of just I guess it's the gratuitous pair work that I find at conferences where it's sort of like, tell a partner what you understand by this, or tell a partner. I mean, the only one which I really liked, who I thought really pulled it off, was a speaker called Paul Seligson, who once said, like very quickly said, okay, I want you to turn to a partner and say everything you remember of what I said over the past 10 minutes. draw out 3 main points of what you think I said over the past 10 minutes.
Yeah, but again, that's purposeful, isn't it? And I wonder sometimes, because I know I'm guilty of myself. One, you're kind of. It's almost sometimes the pair work question is a little bit phatic because you don't actually mean it as pair work. You mean it. I mean, I'm talking in a conference session, and it might be true in teaching as well. But the conference, it's almost phatic, and I do it. And I know I do it more, and it's not pair work, but I do it especially when I'm doing webinars, because you need that time to kind of get a drink of water or collect your thoughts. And you know, when you go quickly tell your partner about this, part of that is almost done as a time buying exercise for the trainer.
There's also that as well.
So I wonder if people see for it in that way. You know, it's just like kind of whereas the task you've just talked about, Paul, there was obviously a very concrete task, and there was something to get in it, and it was a chance for some reflection. Which is quite important, I think.
That's true as well. To put a pin in this and kind of like
we've entered into serious discussion. This is,
I know. And to get back to teaching, why don't we just say that in training and workshops, we should be careful about overdoing working in pairs, because we know that it's not always great with teachers.
There is a website that is actually called "Do You Use Pair Work Too Much?" Do you know that?
Oh. A website for that name.
Well, it's called Using English, but they've got an article called there's a whole page on their website of using pair work, and they give, although they're a bit tenuous, 26 reasons for overdoing pair work. Go on, let's
use that to talk about we were talking about pair work in training, but in teaching, I mean, why is pair work so popular? One of the things that I always joke about with other writers is in coursebook writing and writing coursebook notes and notes for teachers, you end up writing work in pairs so often that one really common typo is that I always end up writing work in Paris. It's a super common typo to make, work in Paris, because it's almost always like work in pairs or work with a partner or ask and answer.
Do you not have autocorrect sense of that? I used to when I know.
But autocorrect doesn't catch that because it's still correct. Work in Paris.
No, I always tell my to give it a rule that if I make that mistake to change it back, because you do it so many times. So the reason to put people into pairs is to maximize their amount of English. Is that right?
I think it's to maximize the amount of English speaking time. It's to also get students used to not just the idea that they should only speak English and hear English from the teacher, right? You know, so that kind of idea is like you've got to respect other people's English and not just, you know, I just want to talk to the teacher, have the teacher talk to me. I think it's also a lot of activities really work well in language teaching in pairs, like the whole concept of the information gap and the communicative style of language teaching, where one person has some information and the other person has information. There's a gap there that they have to fill. I think that's another good reason, because it kind of gives a reason to communicate when a good activity is set up like that.
I think it's a good activity. I think it just depends on the activity. I think sometimes you do those often. A lot of photocopyable resource books have pair work activities in them, and sometimes they feel so contrived. One of the ones I really detest, maybe should we bring back Room 101 just so I can put in crosswords? I really dislike the pair work crossword.
Oh no, I've just finished making one of those for a book.
I'm sorry. It's just kind of like, no. Crosswords aren't pair work activities naturally. They can be group activities. They just contrive.
But it does work so well as a sort of like A and B thing. It's like
because all you're doing is like, what is the name for an animal with, and it's like
well, I guess it gives them something concrete to write down. All right, well, let's see. We're already off topic again. We said, why do people work in pairs? What other things are good for pair work then in classes? So I would argue it's good for like some information gap things. It gives a reason to communicate, which you might not otherwise have. So I think pair work can be good for that. I think pair work also can be good for establishing a good group environment and training people to have a kind of safe environment in class. If you have people, they're used to talking to each other already, it's not just a teacher fronted thing. I think you can get a better atmosphere in the class if you have good pair work stuff that's happened.
And I think some people would argue it's also a good way of dealing with different abilities, stroke levels, and I use those words differently in a class.
Exactly. Yep. I think it also is good for breaking up, giving a
But
bit
does
variety.
is it a bit of variety? Because doesn't any? I mean, going back to that website as you were about to do, isn't it? Don't we default to pair work quite a lot?
Yeah, and I think as I taught more and more years, I started becoming less afraid of having moments where people were just writing something for like 5 minutes or reading something. Whereas I used to kind of think, okay, get that out of the way so we get back to the good stuff that, like, you got to all be talking in English and really communicative. And now I like to think of those moments like breaking things up. So like a language class will have some parts of buzzing where people are speaking in pairs or groups. They will have some parts of just listening to the teacher speak, and they'll have some parts where it's just quiet in class and everyone's writing some sentences or reading a text.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna go a different way. I think one of the things that's annoyed me more as a trainer, I think as I got older, more experience perhaps, is the way that pair work ends. It's kind of, you put people in pairs and they do the pair task, and then coming out of that, you go probably into the teacher feedback stage, more into whole classwork, and the teacher asks the students, okay, so Lindsay, what did you talk about? And then Lindsay repeats the basically what was said in pairs to the teacher. And I don't think that kind I think there's a art to handling the feedback of pair work, which teachers don't always appreciate or look at.
Yeah. Well, I suppose like anything, if it's done in a cursory way, then it tends to
True.
feel inauthentic. Whereas if it's done like, so what were you guys talking about? Or what did you, again,
Yeah.
like if it's like those kind of moral, ethical dilemmas, like what did you think? Or what do you think this is? And so on and so forth. I think also pair work, I like using it for even little things. Like they do an exercise and they check answers with a partner and make any changes they think they want to make.
Yeah, me too. And I think that's, but that's quite interesting. The last couple of things there you just said, that website to which I alluded before, it's like you ask the students. One of the things you assign you use pair work too much is you ask the students to check the answers in pairs, even though they have all the right answers. Again, I think a common kind of early teacher mistake.
Yeah, I suppose. Although I don't, depending on the size of the class, I certainly don't know if they have all the right answers or not. I can kind of guess, but you never know if someone's not paying
Don't you
attention.
monitor, Lindsay?
I do, but not right over their shoulders in their papers.
My favourite thing on this list, which I'm not going to go to the whole list because I'll just put it. The thing is, you use pair work too much when the students start talking in pairs before you've even told them to.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I mean, there's another thing as well. If you want to make pair work more defined as a actual thing, like now we are doing a pair work thing rather than the just, oh, okay, check with a partner. I used to do it for speaking with teenager classes. So there's sometimes it would be that, well, check with the partner, and then I wouldn't be really like on top of it so much. But if I said, now you're going to be doing a pair work speaking activity, and I called it speaking stations, I said, okay, so now you have to go to speaking stations, which meant they physically had to turn their chair to face each other. So, I mean, in this case, they could turn the chairs.
Kind of, yeah, all right. Yeah,
and now you're sitting right in front of someone. It's like when you kind of like switch around to a circle thing and you're looking at each other as opposed to everyone in a line. But now you're actually facing each other. And I'm like, now put the books away and do the thing with the...
Yeah, I often do that as a kind of warmer exercise, but I do have the students in the lines. But then at the end of, so they talk, they stand up in facing each other, yeah, and then but once after they and give them a set amount to speak, but after that time is finished, I move one person from one end of the line to the other, so they all shuffle on, so they automatically get repaired.
Yes, I love that. I was going to come to that later about getting people into pairs, and I've
stolen your thunder.
Just jumped the gun.
Oh no, should we take a break then?
I think we should. I need to recover.
Dear listener, it's so good that we're together again. Your jargon buster has been allowed out of his underground bunker for his annual missive from the front lines of lexical and linguistic confabulation. So what do glasses, trousers, shoes, shorts, and your students have in common? That's right, they spend most of their time in pairs. So today we're going to pick some of the different kinds of pairs you can find in the classroom. That's open and closed pairs. Let's start with open pairs. Essentially, this is when a pair work activity happens with an audience. The most obvious example is when you, the teacher, asks a question to the student. So that could include questions like, did you watch the match last night? How do we make past simple regular verbs? What did Mary do next? How do you ask someone about experiences in their life? What are you doing right now? Now you say it. What are we doing next? Or the student asking you a question like, what does orangutan mean? In these examples, you are chatting, checking understanding of language, checking comprehension of texts, eliciting new language, modelling an activity, checking understanding of the task, and the student is asking for clarification. A veritable smorgasbord of questions, all between the teacher and the student. But of course, open questions can take place between students as well. So this could include those times when, as a teacher, you coerce your students into talking together. Julia, ask Mario about his weekend. Or perhaps it happens spontaneously as one learner reacts to another. But it can also happen in activities such as mingles when students wander around the classroom chatting to whoever is available. Now let's move on to closed pairs. Now this is something you're going to be very familiar with, unless you've stubbornly resisted the last 30 odd years of English language teaching. Yep, this is when you say to your students, now talk to your partner, or turn to the person next to you, or discuss the question in pairs. It's as simple as that. So there we go, a pair of pairs. That's all from your Jargon Buster for this episode. Let's return to Lindsay and Shaun, a right pair of... well, I'll let you decide how to finish that sentence. See you next time.
Okay, Lindsay, shall I go back to stealing your thunder?
No, I'm going to thunder on myself now.
Okay, well, there we go. All
right.
Can I go get a coffee then? I'll come back after you.
You can go and you can do whatever you like.
Okay.
This is the next part of the section. I think we wanted to talk about ways that we get people into pairs, because I always thought this was an interesting one, making like the act of getting into pairs a pair work kind of thing already. So often, it's just sort of like, okay, work with a partner, just default to the person next to you. Shaun, have you come back? Are you there?
Oh, it's just having a quick kip.
Okay. Shaun mentioned the way. Do you want to just say it again? Because it went really quickly. So this was the way of like when they're in pairs and you want to shuffle them to other pairs.
The lineup that I was talking about, I wasn't meaning it from just a way of putting them into pairs. Well, I see where you're coming from. It was a way of defining pair work, not just being sat at their desks. Yeah. That was the point I was making.
Well, the first thing yeah, I mean, that's already kind of getting people into new pairs, because there's sometimes you want to do an activity where they check with a partner and it's like, now do this again with a different partner, and then sometimes you like stand up and find a new partner, and then people sit down and lo and behold, there's at least 6 pairs that are the same pairs because they didn't move enough around. And what I really love, and I saw another teacher do it, and I was like, wow, that's so elegant. I hadn't thought of that. It's just one person gets up and goes to the other side of the room, sits down next to the first person. And that's the new pair, and then all the pairs, no one else moves.
Moved.
They've all just shuffled into a new partner.
That is quite elegant. I give it a...
Teachers, if ever you haven't done that, and you have a class of over 12, just do it once, and it's like watching, dominoes all fall, and you're like, wow, only one person moved, and everyone has a new partner.
We can overcomplicate repairing, can't we? We're very good at overcomplicating that piece of classroom management.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, the obvious thing is just like you get them to work with the partner next to you. But there is some other kind of fun ways of getting people into pairs. With younger learners, I used to have a whole set of cards of famous pairings. So I'd have like Batman, Robin, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Asterix, Obelix. Who are some other famous ones?
Laurel and Hardy.
Yes, we're showing our age. Famous duos, famous singing duos. Jay-Z and Beyonce, he said, desperately trying to sound younger.
Wow, it sounded cool.
I'm trying to sound desperately younger than you now. But anyway, so you'd get famous pairs, and then have those all in individual cards. And once I knew how many students there, I'd kind of select the right cards, mix all the cards up, and I give everybody a card. They had to get up and as quickly as possible find their partner. And then and I didn't say this is going to be for your pair work, but this is just beginning. It's like, okay, everyone, you have a name, you have to find the other person. They found the other person. It's like, now sit down with that person. They're your partner for the next activity.
Can I take that? Can I add that into make that into a longer activity?
Go for it.
All right, so you've done a vocab lesson of the famous people the week before. So you know stickers on the back?
Okay.
So you put the pairs on the stickers on the back, but you don't have to do pairs like that. You could have like tennis racket ball or salt and pepper, and they're on the back. So first of all, they mingle as a group, identifying what the sticker on the back is, and then when they find, then once they've identified, they find the one they should be with, then they sit down. So you become a revision exercise that leads into a pair work exercise.
My gosh, we could keep adding to this until you have one exercise that begins at the beginning of the class, brilliant. And at the end of the class, that's your partner for the next class.
Yeah, perfect, Lindsay, perfect. So you know what? We're dangerously talking about teaching here so much.
I know, but here's another really good one that I really like. I got this from Jim Scrivener. He gave one of anagrams. So this.
Hang on. I'm just going to say hello, Jim, because he's been hassling me on Twitter.
Okay. Hi, Jim. All right. So in this one, he says to ask the students to write down their first name and surname, but rearrange all the letters to make an anagram, which they write on a new piece of paper. You collect in the anagrams and redistribute. Students try to unravel the anagram and find the new partner's name.
Hang on. You just had a go at me for the length of my activity.
I love these 5-minute activities that could be
5 minutes.
Minutes. I think it could sneakily be 15 minutes. Yeah. I thought this was cute as well. Again, this one is another one of Jim Scrivener's ones. Instead of saying like A, B, C, you know, like you can do the like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, no, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
And then you put hands up, everybody's A, hands up, everybody's B.
Alternatives to saying A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B. He says, change A, B, C into the names of real world items. They are purely for making pairs or groups and can immediately be forgotten. So he is like apple, banana, cherry, purple, crimson, turquoise, rain, sun, snow. I don't know. I thought it was cute.
And yeah, no, that's not for me.
Oh, but listen to this one. Listen to this last one. Eggs, coffee, bacon. Eggs, coffee, bacon. Get together and make a complete breakfast. Oh,
hey,
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on.
No. I'm just listening to all your contrived activities to put people in pairs. I think this is a good example of why we shouldn't put people in pairs. Just talk to the person next to you who you're comfortable with. Don't mess around.
What a lazy way of getting people into pairs. Anyway, so those are some ways that we get into pairs. Here's another question then. Let's switch over to another question. I'm going to ask you, this is a good question you sometimes get on teacher training courses. What advice do you give when you have pair work and you have a group of 3? Or when you have like an odd number of students, rather.
Oh, it depends on what advice do I give or what do I do? Because there are two different things. If it was a training course, I'd just tell them to make the last pair of 3. But if it's a class I know well, I'd be the pair. I'd make the pair up.
Okay. See, now your first one that you said, that's what I used to do as well. Make the last group of 3. But then I learned this from another teacher who did this and made a small comment. I thought, wow, that's so true. Make the first group of 3 and make everything else pairs. Because when you make the last group of 3, the last person inevitably feels like the extra wheel on a bicycle. So sort of like you go, okay, James, you and Maria, you and you, you and you, you and you. Sean. Okay, Sean, can you just work with Michael and Jeff? And then you feel like, whereas compared to this, Sean, I want you to work with Michael and Jeff. Then you two work together, you two. All of a sudden you feel a lot more special.
Yeah, but that also means that I've counted the number of students before I decided to put them in pairs.
We're back to the lazy teacher, Sean, again. Yeah, of course you have.
It's not lazy teaching. It's just effective teaching. It's kind of like why put all your energy into things that are really insignificant, like counting how many students you've got before you do pair work.
Right. You're the guy who has all those extra photocopies at the end of the class.
I don't use paper in class. Never use paper in class.
We've been talking about 2x2 and work in pairs and stuff like that in terms of like language teaching. But in language, I think you had some things that you wanted to share of pairs as well.
Yeah, it's pairs are pairs. I mean, obviously we took pairs to do pair work, but obviously we teach a lot of pairs. Pairs come up a lot of binomials in English. So I thought, because obviously these are one of those staples because they're such a fixed collocation. They come up in many course books. So
why don't you define the term for everybody, just in case it went over someone's head? A binomial.
A binomial. So rock and roll, salt and pepper, black and white. Those
binomials
words
are two words that go together, but the binomial is like it's a certain order, right? It's not roll and rock. It's always rock and roll. It's not pepper and salt. It's salt and pepper.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there is logic to that, but there are some rules to that apparently, which we'll get to in a moment. This modern way of the internet of things, like the clickbait stuff, where it's like you will never believe. And it becomes like numbers. It's just like 20 things you had never knew about Lindsay Clansfield. Yeah. Well, there is a website a website which had 29 must know binomials in English. You think,
must know. Okay.
But 29 is such a random number. Why not 30? Why not 25?
Yeah.
But 29 binomials in English.
All right, hit me. So what are some of them?
Let's go to peace. Go on, can you finish it? Peace. Peace. P-E-A-C-E. Peace and...
Peace and love. Peace and love.
No.
What? No, it's not peace and war, because it's war and peace.
Peace and quiet. That's what's on the worksheet.
Oh, peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Done and...
What?
Done. D-O-N-E. Done and...
Dusted.
Well done. I thought you were going to get it. Safe and...
Sound.
Oh, he's doing well. Short and...
Sweet.
Neat and...
Tidy.
Wear and... W-E-A-R. Wear and...
Oh. Wear and tear. Wear and tear.
What's the thing about it? High and...
Low. No, high and dry.
Very good. Down and...
Out.
You're onto this, aren't you?
Oh yeah. We're getting along again now.
We are, yeah. Well, I don't think we're. It's good to have a little disagreement. Make or, because we'll change the word. Make or
break.
Ups and
downs.
We have lots of those, don't we? So we live and
live and die.
Well, we do, but that's not on the sheet. Live and
learn.
You live and you
learn.
Yeah. So
learn.
all these things, all these binomials. But what I found interesting, and I didn't know there was a name for it. So that's a binomial. Do you know what a reduplication is? Like
no, I saw this on the show notes, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't reach for Google, so I thought you would just teach me.
Well, actually, in a very strange way, this came from Facebook because a teacher posted it on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and I knew we were going to talk about pairs. So they posted a newspaper article in the Facebook feed, and it was called "Why Tok Tick Doesn't Sound Right to Your Ears," and which I'll get to in a moment. And I was thinking, but is TikTok a binomial? And it's not. Apparently, it's called a reproduction because you're essentially repeating the second word. Yeah, I know that it is changing because of the vowel sound, but this idea of the repeating the sound, repeating the thing is called a reproduction rather than a binomial, which I never knew.
So test me again on these. So TikTok is one, but I'm scratching my head for others. Give me the first part.
Well, that is quite interesting, and there are lots of these when you start thinking about it, and they fall into basically three categories. So you've got the bloat ones like TikTok. So bloat is where the vowel sound changes. So you've got tick and then talk changes in one. So you've got sing song, for example, where you're going there, ping pong, mishmash, those kind of ones, ding dong. Okay. But then you've got ones which are exact repetitions, and ones we use a lot. For example, blah blah. So,
blah blah,
and knock knock, and bye bye, those kind of things.
Oh, okay, all right.
And then there is a third category called the rhyming one. So your old fuddy duddy, for example, or hocus pocus, or hoity toity, hurly burly, those kind of. And I found that really interesting because I genuinely hadn't thought about it before, and that was
how many things we put into twos like that.
Yeah. So they are all in twos, and so they can be categorized into three things. And let's say so that you've got rhyming, you've got repetition, and then you've got the vowel the vowel sound change, so to speak. So, and the reason is quite simply for why do we say TikTok and not Tok Tick is because it doesn't sound right to our ears to say Tok Tick or Kong King, for example. It's just one of those things that
Kong King.
yeah, one of those things that. But so,
Okay.
so the rule is, according to this article, if there are 3 words, then the order has to go I, A, O. If there are 2 words, then the first letter is always, the first vowel is always I, and the second is A and O. So I mean, I've been teaching for years and taught loads of stuff, and I've never really considered this. And then it turns out that actually on the Cambridge University website, they actually talk about the rules of binomials as well, which I never.
What are the rules of binomials?
Okay,
why is it knife and fork and not fork and knife?
There are 5 different rules that apply. So some are simple. Some it's just adjectival order.
Okay.
So you say tall and thin, not thin and tall.
Yeah.
But so the other ones, so the logic. So logic is one of the ones. Cause and effect. So obviously, logically, you have to have cause before effect. You have old before new. You have crime before punishment. Those kind of things. Yeah. Then the more interesting ones, and this is I'm reading off the Cambridge website now. The semantically bigger or better thing comes first. So they give examples: fish and chips, bacon and eggs, meat and vegetables. Yeah, so the semantically bigger thing. So then you also get like good and bad, high and low, as we looked at before. So if that's not the rule, then where you can't discern that, and obviously we must be doing this all subconsciously when we're doing it. So then the longest word goes last. So you salt and pepper. Pepper is longer, so it goes last. Cloak and dagger. Dagger goes longer. So that could be another one, and then in a shockingly antiquated these days, so male goes before female, so men and women, his and hers, Mr. and Mrs., brother and sister, which is quite interesting. I generally thought that was.
That is interesting. So, although I don't know how good and bad falls into that category of like the semantically bigger
or better. Well, it's better to be good than bad, isn't it?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's bigger or better.
Bigger or better. Got it.
But it's a really interesting website, which we'll put in the show notes. So
to close off with a funny little story about binomials, in a course book that I wrote, Global, we had the unit titles were binomials, and we thought we were so clever by doing all the unit titles binomials, and it worked really well. Like you'd have law and order, and so you'd have your unit. The first half of the unit was law things, and the second half was sort of related to order. Until we began to run out of binomials, like because a course is 6 levels, and at the advanced level, we were left with the weirdest binomials, and we couldn't make them work. Like I think we did in the end, but we had some units that were like ebb and flow. So now imagine 2 lessons on the topic of ebb, and it just was not working. But I think we finally we squeezed out all we could of the binomials. But so that's why I became quite familiar with them. But curiously enough, I'd never read the rules of why one became before another. That's very interesting. Right. I think this brings us to an end of another successful episode. Successful?
Well, it depends if you like pair work or not, or whether this is an episode in which I've been called a lazy teacher on more than one occasion,
and which the activities I have been called useless.
Yes. Inefficient. However, I think I did for once teach Lindsay something, which is
we kind of got we came back together and geeked out on binomials at the end, so that was nice.
Yeah. So successful, no, but a different kind of episode, perhaps.
All right. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for listening. If you have any ideas on how you use pair work, or if you think all of us use too much pair work, not enough, interesting ways that you deal with the odd number of students, you can always drop us a line. We're on Facebook, or you can drop us a line at TEFLcommute.com. Find us in all the other places like Twitter and stuff like that. We always love to hear from listeners. So any ideas that you have or any other interesting binomial lessons that you've taught, please feel free to pass along to us. I think that's going to bring us to the end of another episode then.
It is. So in a binomial way, come and see us or come and visit us at our website or whatever. Yeah, that was good. Enjoyed that. Thanks, Lindsay. See you. One more left for the season. See you at the next one.
Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to the TEFL Commute, an original podcast produced and presented by Lindsay Clanfield, Shaun Wilden and James Taylor. Don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or your podcast player of choice, and by visiting us at teflcommute.com.